Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Friday AMA with the LAMINA1 team. Today's topic is all around our Space Laser NFT competition, which we launched at the top of this week. And the ask in general is to design and submit a laser design for the upcoming release of one of our first explorable spaces on the LAMINA1 Hub. So I'm going to drop a link to the sort of Calling All Artists CTA we released on Monday in case you missed it. It's got a bunch of information about the competition, selection process, all of that stuff. But we're going to dive a little bit deeper into everything today with the L1 design and engineering teams. So as a little bit of background, this is actually the third initiative we've kicked off so far in celebration of Open Metaverse Discovery Month, which is happening all October long on the LAMINA1 community. The first kickoff we had was our new integration of the Emergence Toolkit, which is two SDKs, one for Unity, one for Unreal, that are designed to seamlessly connect Web3 and game engine experiences to the L1 blockchain. The second is an interactive workshop we're hosting with its creators, Open MetaDAO, on October 24th and 25th. For developers who want to get started on using it for LAMINA1. I'm going to post a link into that in the chat as well. So basically, why are we doing this? So the month is basically going to culminate with the launch of this first space we'll be releasing on the LAMINA1 Hub. It's a game called Space Lasers. It's going to be used to test out a whole fleet of NFT, game engine integration, and smart contract functionalities, and a bunch of other things that we're going to be talking about shortly when it rolls out later this month. So today I'm joined by some members of the L1 core team who've been super integral to the development of this test experience and are just now putting the final touches on the game. So on stage with me today are SDK lead Joel Belgard, our design lead and creative director Jordan Sada, our chief product officer Gordon Matty, our UX lead Elena Bryan, and our CTO Will Carter. They're going to be making up also the bulk of our selection committee for the winners of the creator competition. And yeah, they're here to answer questions about the upcoming experience, the competition, and basically, what we're looking for from community members who want to participate and get involved either in this competition or in testing the space when it rolls out a little bit later this month. So before we dive into questions, I just wanted to level set with just a couple of kickoff questions. The first one's for Joel, which is generally, what is Space Lasers and what is this experience going to entail when it rolls out in just a couple of weeks?
Okay. So Space Lasers is our first little sandbox to show off NFTs driving gameplay and visualization. It's a simple little arcade game. You get a little box at the bottom of the screen, you move back and forth, you shoot your laser. But your laser is very, very different depending upon which NFT you have equipped. And most exciting for me personally is if you get a high enough score, you can get one that is randomly generated. So its color array will be random. Its motion will be different. We have different types of motions for each of the lasers. But the random one is particularly exciting because you're like, ooh, what am I going to get? What's my laser going to be? And that's it. It's really just a fun little sandbox experiment to kick off what we can do with these things.
Amazing. And next one is for Gordon. So, why now? Like, what are the underlying mechanisms we're developing and testing by releasing this sort of first space tester game experience?
For us to be able to support kind of the array of possible experiences that people want to build, whether it's gaming or art or fashion or film, etc., kind of across all these creative industries, we really have to take a kind of deep look at how we provision kind of the blockchain into the experience, essentially. And so we're very focused on kind of the core metadata architecture as it relates to the specification of the asset itself and how to bring that asset into the game and how does it actually get used and interpreted within the game. So our goals here are really to start putting in place kind of this core plumbing under the hood to support that asset interoperability, number one. We've also started to make some progress in terms of how we handle kind of identity persistence and interoperability within experiences as well. So how do you bring your Lamina1 account into Space Lasers? How do you kind of really drastically try and make that as seamless as possible for users so that they're not having to deal with lots of pop-ups, etc., and they can kind of really focus on playing the game and getting the value out of the game. So those are really the kind of two things, really around asset and identity interoperability.
Amazing. And Jordan, as the brand creative lead behind a ton of the UI aspects, not only of this experience, but the entire Lamina1 Hub as a whole, shout out to Jordan, honestly, it's beautiful. What are the design and UX challenges you've been sort of tackling with our engineers and like UX leads with this first phase? What are the things that you've been kind of doing as a designer? How's that process been for you?
Yeah, I guess one of the most complex challenges from a design standpoint that kind of like interplays with the actual product development um, has definitely been around like inventory management and how users can like view and organize everything. Um, anything as simple as like just like gallery or like carousel views, and also like what that beyond that like what information is most important to display for each item. Um, Often with decisions like that, I guess too, there's just kind of like this domino effect of design uh, implications, and definitely requires like sometimes you can go down a rabbit hole of like future scoping uh, what that user experience could be, but kind of trying to tame it with near-term versioning that's realistic for the product roadmap and stuff.
Thanks so much, Jordan. And Elena, as the person, you actually came up with the idea to host this competition a couple of weeks back when you were sort of helping to spearhead the like project management and stuff of the development of this project. So, and also as like an NFT artist yourself, what are we looking for NFT creators in the community? What's the basic creative brief or ask that we're asking for this competition?
Yeah, so as everyone knows, Lamina1 is really focused on creators, but we are not in the business of defining what it means, or we only want this kind of design. So the short answer is that we really want to embrace the creativity that this community can bring to the table, and embrace all kinds of ideas for what you might think of a laser to be. And if you are a specific kind of NFT creator, somebody maybe focusing on more like portraiture or 3D assets, like we definitely want to support whatever it is that you as an NFT creator are creating. And then so I'd say the creative brief is really, we want to keep it as open-ended as possible. The only kind of thing we're looking for is that it should be some interpretation of a laser, and we have 5 different laser colors that you can choose from, and we definitely welcome you to make as many submissions as you want. So even if you've already submitted some designs, if then over the weekend you have, oh man, I want to know what would a laser sandwich look like, or what would a bouquet of purple lasers look like, feel free to keep submitting and keep that ideation going. So we're really looking forward to seeing what everyone comes up with, and leaving it super open-ended.
Awesome. Yeah, I think anyone interested in looking at like specs, like of course we have like minimum resolution and the like sort of aspect ratios you need. That's all in the post that I posted in the chat earlier today. But yeah, as Elena said, like it's about creativity. Yeah, we've got the full brief written out there. But yeah, I think it's really interesting. Thanks so much for kind of like sharing just how much we want to encourage creators to kind of show us their styles and their unique interpretations. So yeah, that's kind of our quick off questions. We got a ton of community questions in this week, so I'm going to try to address as many of them as we can. The first question from the community comes from Cryptomant, who asks, so who can participate in the NFT creator competition? What are we looking for specifically, like artists, or can anyone participate?
Just going off of what I was saying before, definitely anyone can participate. If you are an artist, or if you know of, who's your favorite NFT artist, we would definitely encourage you to, activate your friends. Or, if maybe you're not typically an artist, feel free to get your creative juices flowing. And so the short answer is this competition is definitely for everyone. And we would like to see as many people getting excited about it as possible.
I do want one caveat, though. You'll probably notice, I'll share the submission form in a little bit, but we are asking folks to submit like websites, Twitters, that kind of a thing. And the reasoning for that is obviously in order to feature your work, we need to be able to prove that, the work is in fact yours and that you are a real person or a creator. So I think in general, anyone can participate, but just make sure that you're providing us enough information that we can do a little bit of a back search to make sure that like the work you've produced is original. Because obviously we don't want to get into, an issue where someone submits a work by someone else. Like that would be, we're a blockchain by creators for creators. We're going to be doing a lot of reverse image source searching, all of that stuff. So again, I think it's for anyone, but make sure that you can prove who you are and that your work is yours. Bin HNBT.find asks, what will the NFTs be used for? Are they going to be like soulbound NFTs or badges? What's the utility of these NFTs?
I mean, right now the primary purpose is largely to dog food some of the work we're doing around spaces. And so like, and part of that's what this experience is. It's a way for us to develop while creating. And so like put ourselves in the shoes of you guys, both as users, as creators, and then allow us to iteratively develop on the spaces platform as a whole. So like more specifically, the NFTs as they're being released right now for the spaces experience, there will be NFTs for the lasers themselves, and then there's also going to be a soulbound trophy for people who get past a certain score. And so that can be sort of viewed as a badge. The NFTs themselves, specifically the randomly generated ones that Joel alluded to earlier, might be a little more interesting for people to play around with, trading or collecting. But these might also, I guess, grow iteratively over time with additional features. I mean, that's the goal of what these NFTs will be used for. So we want to, connect with you guys, the community, see what you're doing with them, see how we can improve either the structure of them or, the usability of them based on the feedback you guys give us. So it's all part of this iterative process of making the LAMINA1 platform easier to use and develop on. While also making it a little bit more engaging for you guys. So it gives you something to do.
Louis Karkik asks, how will you manage the intellectual property of the artist's creation?
I can take this one. This is something that we think a lot about, and related to what I said earlier around kind of the metadata architecture as it relates to assets. We think about how best to encode IP rights, and also from those how best to encode royalties. Our goal is to try and make it as seamless as possible. What's happened, and the royalties come from the rights. And what's happened in the NFT space today is largely, dealing with rights in a kind of in a side channel, I suppose. Like sometimes you might see a set of terms and conditions. When you buy an NFT, sometimes you might not. When you own the NFT, you might not even know what rights you have related to it. And so we think that the solution to this is getting the metadata right. That could be the actual legal agreement, as to terms around the royalty payments, but also it kind of starts with the provenance of actually who created the work in the first place. And it's not always easy to kind of see that provenance on chain today. And so the metadata architecture that we're putting together, although in this initial release for Space Lasers, we won't have this all fully bedded down, we will be evolving that metadata architecture to include a specification for rights, ideally both machine readable, so you can interpret it on chain, as well as being human readable, so somebody can actually understand what they're getting and what they can do with it. The benefit of having kind of rights encoded on chain is that it opens up the space of possibilities, particularly if you allow people to kind of derive assets from other assets, and allow for that kind of creativity. If you can do that on chain, then you actually create a much more cohesive and integrated set of assets that have this kind of these points of provenance and historical use that can add more value over time. So if somebody creates an asset that's related to another asset that already exists, you kind of strengthen the kind of the community or the value of the kind of total asset pool. So that's kind of where we're starting. I think we're going to have some creator provenance in the initial release, at least, to make sure we kind of can pay recognition to the people that are contributing the NFTs from the community. And so that's starting from there, but in the future, we'll get more deeper functionality over time.
And Jacko Girl asks, with regards to the Space Lasers competition, which ERC standard are we going to be using for minting the lasers and bringing them into the game?
Currently, we're using 1155 for the lasers themselves. And again, as what I was trying to get at earlier, initially, no, we're not going to be supporting kind of additional traits outside of the ones that are specified in the 1155 initially. But like, as I said, part of the goal here is to see how these are used to build out schemas and specs for 1155s that are more generally usable, more interoperable. And so we will add, as time goes on, additional information to these NFTs. So it might mean, redeploying the Space Lasers game at a later date with some of this new functionality integrated. But in the initial release, the 1155s are going to have a set schema of traits that we predefine or that are randomly generated.
So Jacko Girl, you were right in your musings and AMA questions. We are in fact using ERC 1155. I'm going to move forward to a couple more questions about the competition itself from the community. So Central Yaler asks them, what benefits do we get from participating in NFT competitions like this? What's in it for our creators?
So I think that ultimately we are moving toward supporting a lot more benefits, but at this stage, the most greatest benefit that you get is to help us test our platform and have the chance to have your work as an artist featured on the LAMINA1 Betanet. Your handle or your username will actually be encoded into the contract. So anybody who touches that contract will be able to look you up, see your art. So it's a great promotional chance for NFT artists, as well as just being a really great chance to test our platform and help us to continue to drive and optimize the performance and experience of NFT creators on LAMINA1. But as I kind of alluded to, and maybe others can speak more to, we definitely will be kind of continuing these competitions and hopefully offering more incentives more ways that will make it, a really great opportunity and chance for artists, not only from a discovery perspective, but also in terms of, royalties and having your NFT accrue value, but not at this stage in Betanet, to be clear.
Yeah. I definitely am already planning a quest where we're going to have people kind of like sharing the lasers on their social platforms or Discord, that they've been able to win. And I think attribution is going to be huge and important. So I think, people will be able to look you up. You'll be credited every time that NFT is shared. We've got a pretty big community, almost at 50,000. And so it's kind of like our last creator competition where, you get to be a part of history. You get to be one of the first NFTs kind of minted on the Betanet chain. You get to help us out with testing, and you get your art and your work kind of like spread across our pretty big and rapidly growing community. Arte552 asked, will we be able to gift these NFTs to friends, for example, either on LAMINA1 or other chains or networks in the future? Do we just have to keep these NFTs, or is there going to be a chance for, giving them away, trading them, that kind of a thing?
Yes, you'll be able to trade them. Obviously, outside of the soulbound tokens, which by definition can't really be transferred out of your wallet, the lasers themselves and any iterations of them we make further on are meant to be traded, collected, and used in the experience. I don't think that the capability to trade them will be available initially within the hub, though that's something that will come out soon in a future update. So if you did want to trade them, at least early on, you would need to do it directly using MetaMask. So it'll be probably relegated to the more sophisticated Web3 users, at least in the short term. But eventually, yes, you'll be able to trade these directly through the hub.
Space DGen asks, what are the criteria you guys are going to be using for judging the submissions, and how will the aesthetic and appeal and originality of the designs be evaluated?
I think the question was somewhat answered in the question. We are looking for originality, aesthetic appeal, verve, if you will, just really looking for great images. Definitely, we will consider the use of AI, and I think that we'll talk about that a little bit more shortly. But definitely looking to have a group of lasers that really has some variety and shows just high quality design across the board. So, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, to give you guys a kind of peek behind our selection process. So this team here and a couple of other folks from the L1 core team are basically going to be taking all of the submissions we get in before Sunday at midnight. And first, Elena and I put everything through this sort of like initial filter where we first pare it down by our community, by just based on your survey responses alone. So what we're looking for in general are works that are original. They're not going to fail any reverse image searches that we pass on them. They adhere to ethical AI practices. Again, we'll get into that question a little bit later. What does ethical AI mean? They have complete and not set like spammy survey responses, and in general, like offensive or explicit imagery, we're probably not going to feature your laser in our first experience. From there, we'll move on to aesthetic evaluation. So that's when Elena and I will pull the rest of the evaluation committee in. And that's when it gets more into the like aesthetic appeal, originality, as well as the sort of provable work history of you as an artist. So, do you have other NFTs collections out there? How provable are you? How big of a following do you have? That's definitely a consideration we will take. We're not going to only choose people who are like really huge NFT artists. I want to make sure that we get kind of like a nice spread of like maybe people are new to the industry, maybe people who are more established artists, but that'll be kind of a consideration as well. And we decide on finalists basically on direct votes. We pull everything into a Miro board and we put little tokens on it until we've got the kind of 5 designs that we all agree on. And in general, the number of winners in the competition is really dependent on the quality and quantity of submissions that we receive. So, if someone submits like a really awesome laser set, like maybe we'll only have like 1 or 2 winners. If we decide to choose, a different creator for each laser color, we could do that. But it's kind of hard to make that decision right now because we're just going to kind of wait to see what we get from you guys. But yeah, the selection criteria, I mean, we're looking for all sorts of different styles. In the blog post introing, I did share a couple of screenshots or like example kind of mock-ups of what the game looks like if you're looking to kind of like match the aesthetic. But yeah, I mean, you guys know the LAMINA1 brand. You guys kind of know the vibe we're going for. And yeah, we're super interested. But yeah, that's kind of like behind the selection process that we're doing. Community members will not be able to vote for the finalists or winners. That was definitely like a request or call from some of our community members, and it's super interesting. I think we might consider that for like larger creator competitions, but this one, it's pretty quick. We're just folding 5 designs into a game, so we're going to keep this one pretty agile for the time being. All right, so we said we were going to talk about AI later. So Akila asks, so can we or should we not submit AI images? Like, what's our stance on using AI generated images for the competition? It's a little nuanced, so I'd love for you guys to get into it a little bit. Or I can take this one. I'll answer this one, guys. So the idea of AI and what we're looking for with ethical AI use is we are not outright banning AI generated images from the competition running. So if you are an AI creator or if you use AI in your creative practice, feel free to submit a design. That said, please be transparent about it. We've got a question in the survey that asks, did you use AI to generate this image? And then the immediate follow-up question after that is, please describe your, process for creating this NFT. So what we're looking for in terms of ethical use of AI is, credit the artist you prompted to generate the image, avoid using shady platforms that pull data without permission. For example, I shared a couple of example images of lasers that we have been using as placeholders right now. Those are generated using Adobe AI, which holds itself to a higher standard of attribution and data pulling than some other platforms out there. So I'd say do your research and don't choose like a super shady image generation platform that is ripping off the work of artists. And also, I mean, in general, last time we held a creator competition, we did feature some AI artists, but they use AI in a way where, they'll create original art with like the AI image simply used as a starting point or inspiration, or they'll generate something using AI and then add their own sort of creative spin onto it in general. Like those are the kinds of interesting things that we're looking for. If you just type like a 1-sentence prompt into Midjourney and like generate a laser for us in 5 seconds, you're probably going to get beaten out by someone who's got like a really interesting process that they've described for how they've created it and are using AI in like an innovative way that's fair to creators. In general, I mean, that's been kind of our stance on AI since the beginning of LAMINA1. And we've actually got an entire AMA on AI and sort of the human-centered approach that we're kind of eyeing. That we did kind of earlier this year that I'd encourage you guys to all check out. I'll drop a link in the chat a little bit later to that one. But yeah, there's no ban on AI. Just, be careful and smart and interesting in the way you use it, I think is kind of the TLDR on that. Next up, Adam Dubis asks, and I think Joel, I'd love to field this question to you, but why space lasers? Why a sci-fi space lasers arcade game in the first place?
Okay. Well, mostly the answer is because it's neat. We needed a platform that wouldn't be super complicated, so not a giant, big 3D super adventure game that would take 3 years to make. But also, I was like, well, if we're going to make a little game to demonstrate our NFTs and our functionality, why not put it in space? Space is cool. Space is the future. This is the future. It's science fiction. It just seems like it would jive.
Amazing. And Gasper No asks, what was the reasoning behind including us, aka the community, in the design process in the first place? Like, just curious, like, why open up the design of these lasers to, all of our L1 builders?
I can take this one. The one of the main reasons that we wanted to open this task up to the community was because we noticed that with the introduction of spaces, we're having a lot of awesome development content focused on space development, game developers, and kind of that side of the process. And we wanted to make sure that we are still holding true to the LAMINA1 vision of, supporting all kinds of creators, including NFT creators, artists, traditional artists, even, all across the design and creative spectrum. So part of the motivation was definitely like, okay, let's make sure that we're pulling in our creatives at any stage that we can. So it just seems like the perfect way to kind of marry the game development part of our community with the NFT creator part. So that was a big motivation, but it also just goes along with our ethos of turning to the community to contribute to the development process and design process wherever we can. We want to make sure that everyone is having an active role in designing the open metaverse, and so we will pull you guys in at every stage that we possibly can.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Elena. Now I'm going to open up to some more big picture questions around the upcoming launch from the community and, what to expect. So Dino369 asks, can you give us a glimpse on what to expect with the upcoming launch of items and spaces on the LAMINA1 Hub? Like, what is this next kind of big update going to look like to the platform?
I'll take this one. I mean, our focus right now is kind of activating spaces on the hub. And there's a couple of different ways that we're doing that. One is working with our early access program partners to scope out prototype experiences that they can bring to LAMINA1. And so that's all in progress right now. And we have dozens of conversations happening on that side of things. And then the second area is really looking at new spaces coming from the community. So I think to that end, Space Lasers at some point will be open sourced. We want to put it out there and give people kind of a template that they can work with. If you're familiar with development in Unity, and you can kind of get going pretty quickly and see what's happening under the hood. And then the third area is, as we are doing this activation month with Emergence and Open Metaverse DAO, starting to kind of channel creativity from the community in that context and looking for people to build spaces using those tools as well. And so really the focus is on space activation. And we think that that's really, really important because it provides a really strong entry point to owning assets. If I'm emotionally invested in a game and I'm really excited about what's happening, then I'm essentially going to convey that emotion in the form of the number of assets that I'm collecting, et cetera, and using them over time. And ultimately, or not even ultimately, kind of as we build out these spaces, we're looking for opportunities to maximize the interoperability of assets going between spaces. So imagine being able to take something that you win in Space Lasers and use it in another space or vice versa. And so really our focus is on kind of that persistence around assets and identities and the ability to drive interoperability between spaces. So we kind of have this spaces first focus in the way that we think about rolling things out. And at the end of the day, spaces drive all the requirements kind of under the hood, ultimately in terms of the feature set that we need to provide to support those spaces and the assets related to them.
Thanks, Gordon. As a little spoiler alert, we're actually our second creator competition of the month, which is going to release right after the Emergence workshops. is actually going to be for creator made spaces themselves. We're obviously going to have a much longer timeline than a week for people to submit, proposals and explanations of those. But yeah, that's going to be our next creator competition. The first one was for NFTs. The next one we're rolling out is going to be for spaces themselves. And, that's going to be completely powered by these kind of new SDKs that we just launched last week on the platform. So yeah, it's all coming together. The Open Metaverse is going to happen, and it's coming to life on LAMINA1 over the next couple of months, and we're super excited for you guys all to join us. Flip7651 asks, what are the challenges and opportunities that arise when designing gameplay mechanics around blockchain and NFTs? I think, Joel, I'd love to kind of ask you this question just because you've been in the throes of this, right? As a Unity developer, working to incorporate sort of NFTs and Web3 elements, what are the challenges that you faced, and what are kind of some of the interesting things you've come upon in this process?
I think the challenges are very much that Web3 is a little alien to typical non-Web3 developers. And getting into it and getting a hold of the stuff that you need, and what exactly is a smart contract, and how do I use it in Unity? And there are some libraries that help out with that, but it's very much almost like a culture shock from a developer's perspective, because it's very different from all the previous development that I had done. But it's and then of course getting the NFT metadata to be what I wanted it to be. We originally looked at 720, and it was just not the way they want the format for those just wasn't going to work for anything that I wanted to do with it. So we had to move to 1155, which was, okay, this actually can do stuff, but all the way that data is stored and the standards around it weren't really designed for driving gameplay. They were designed for here's a picture. Here you go. Here's a picture and it's got some numbers on it. But now we're moving into making games with it. We're actually driving functionality with it. That was a big challenge, getting that all wired up and connected, and how are we going to use it? And then of course with the color lasers, my big push was how can we make something that would be interoperable, right? Because the concept, and I'm a little rambly here, so let me know if I'm going too long, but the concept of I want to go into a game and get something cool and then go into another game and use my cool thing is the dream. But how do you even begin to challenge that? And that's the biggest challenge, I would say. And the color was my initial thought. Well, every game uses colors, so we can manipulate that. And when we move on to making more experiences, we'll demonstrate it. But that's kind of the big idea. And the challenges of getting there was the structure of the data. And how do we make it work with the way that Web3 currently works? And how do we update Web3 to be, the new iteration of it? I'll stop rambling, but those are my thoughts on that. I could talk on that for a long time.
That was an awesome ramble, Joel. I think it makes me be yeah, we need to have just an entire AMA coming up on interoperability. I know there's tons of conversations and debates that go on online and in the community around how do we make interoperability even happen? Is it possible? Is it oh man, such a meaty topic for sure. Colin BQ asks, now that NFT trading volume has dropped to a freezing point, has the team thought about the future evolution or direction of NFTs? What kind of NFTs are truly valuable in this kind of new era, and especially kind of in the sort of winter of NFTs that we are in currently?
Yeah, the speculation is really interesting because it's putting money where you have emotion, and so in a lot of ways it's very useful to perhaps bootstrap kind of an idea around a universe or a game or whatever you might be building. And I think largely, if you, I don't know how many NFT collectors are in the audience, but if you think about the NFT that you hold, what can you actually do with them? And I think your question here kind of gets at that. We really think about this unexplored space, which is the utility and use of NFTs over time, and how they can kind of accrue value implicitly over time based on actual usage. And there's interesting analogies in the collectible space, particularly collectible cars, for example, classic cars that people might collect. The most valuable cars that are out there are actually not sitting in a garage or a museum and never or hardly ever seen by other people. Those cars are exhibited at events. Those cars participate in races. Those cars have photographs taken of them. Those cars are owned by people that have some kind of tastemaker influence. And so we think about kind of those aspects as really the use and utility and the provenance and the history of an asset and how that can be built over time. And so when we think about interoperability, it's really around how do we drastically increase the possibility of those assets being used in as many places as possible. And I think that kind of canvas is largely unexplored, really, certainly at scale. And we definitely want to shift out of building something and promising a future that never arrives to actually starting with assets that have real utility straight away and actually drive to make them usable on an ongoing basis through the future. And obviously, I think as it relates to blockchain, one of the most powerful aspects of it is that you kind of have a forever platform, right? That's backing these assets and backing the games, and particularly if you're putting kind of game logic and asset logic on chain, then it enables you to kind of create something that could live forever and doesn't necessarily need the original creator to be around anymore, or the original game creator where that asset maybe was originally created for to even exist anymore, because these things can be used in other spaces and for many different reasons. So we really think about kind of use and utility and the long-term use of assets as driving value.
Amazing. Yeah, I love NFTs you can actually use. Like, this is a new era, and I think that's, yeah, it's super exciting. And finally, Rapido Domingo asks, when is the upcoming launch of Spaces scheduled? When is it going to roll out? And I see in parentheses, Casey should take this one. So I'm going to say at the end of this month. So, we're, again, kind of putting the final pieces on the design. So on Sunday, the competition closes. We'll be reviewing submissions early next week and then notifying our winners and then popping them into the game. And then, yeah, I'd say keep an eye out on the hub. Next week, we're going to be doing our community airdrop, which is going to be really useful for sort of future testing of experiences and things like that. And then after the airdrop, definitely keep an eye out. The rollout is going to come at the end of this month. So yeah, that's it. It's 12 p.m. So I'm going to close the AMA out for this week. And I'm also going to drop our secret code for this week, which you can redeem for some XP on Zeely today, just for attending and listening to us. So secret code is in the chat feed between two lightning bolts. And just as a reminder, if you're looking to participate in this competition, remember to submit your designs before 11:59 PST on Sunday the 8th. And don't forget to share and retweet this post calling for artists to help us spread the word. Well, you can also earn some sweet Zeely XP along the way for retweeting this. But I think in general, we're looking for more artists to participate. Oh, 11:59 p.m. So like midnight. 23:59. Yes, thank you, Jackal Girl. Basically, the very end of the day, and so that'll actually be Monday morning for a lot of our folks in Europe. So, yeah. Anyway, I also wanted to flag, yesterday we did find out that one of our authentication partners is going to be doing some maintenance over the weekend, and thus the LAMINA1 Hub might be a little buggy for some people, especially with regards to new account creation and logins. That's going to be happening from right when the NFT creator competition closes, actually at around 11 p.m. Pacific time, or 6 a.m. UTC or 2 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're looking to go into the hub to pull out your address or anything, we think you should be fine, but just know that things might get a little bit wonky overnight on Sunday night. And finally, as I said before, airdrop is next week. It's going to be happening on Wednesday, October 11th. If you participated in any badge, white paper, or Zeely Quest initiatives from the beginning when LAMINA1 launched in December of 2022 through September 14th of this year, you will very likely be eligible to claim a reward. this airdrop is going to be huge for us for helping to amplify future feature experience and transaction testing on the LAMINA1 Hub. And yeah, we've got a really exciting couple of weeks for the community in store as Open Metaverse Discovery Month continues. So thank you all so much for your patience and waiting for the airdrop. I know it's been kind of like a long process, but we're feeling super good about it and we're really excited to reward you. And yeah, that reward's going to happen, you know, just before we launch the Space Lasers experience, just before item functionality comes up. And yeah, you'll have definitely a lot more coins to kind of play with, to delegate with, to trade NFTs, to, you know, send tokens back and forth, and a bunch of other things that we're going to be testing together. So thanks guys so much. Please submit designs. We need more lasers. We're really excited to see what you guys come up with. So thanks so much and have a good one.